Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Lizzy Co and the Artist's Way. This is going to be a 12-week series that goes through this book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. This was first published in 1992, and it's still really popular with creatives. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you are probably already aware of it. But if not, have no fear, because the goal of this series is going to be to explore this book for the very first time. I've never done this workshop myself, and I'm really curious to see what happens. So how it's going to work is I'm going to read the chapter aloud to you and then give you my responses. And I'd really be curious to hear about your own responses in the comments below. So let's dive right into the introduction. When people ask me what I do, I usually answer, I'm a writer director and I teach these creativity workshops. The last one interests them. How can you teach creativity, they want to know. Defiance fights with curiosity on their faces. I can't, I tell them. I teach people to let themselves be creative. Oh, you mean we're all creative? Now disbelief and hope battle it out. Yes. You really believe that? Yes. So what do you do? This book is what I do. For a decade now, I have taught a spiritual workshop aimed at freeing people's creativity. I have taught artists and non-artists, painters and filmmakers and homemakers and lawyers, anyone interested in living more creatively through practicing an art. Even more broadly, anyone interested in practicing the art of creative living. While using, teaching, and sharing tools I have found, devised, divined, and been handed, I have seen blocks dissolved and lives transformed by the simple process of engaging the great creator in discovering and recovering our creative powers. The great creator? That sounds like some Native American god. That sounds too Christian, too New Age, too stupid, simple-minded, threatening. I know. Think of it as an exercise in open-mindedness. Just think, okay, great creator, whatever that is, and keep reading. Allow yourself to experiment with the idea there might be a great creator and you might get some kind of use from it in freeing your own creativity. Because the artist's way is, in essence, a spiritual path, initiated and practiced through creativity, this book uses the word God. This may be volatile for some of you, conjuring old, unworkable, unpleasant, or simply unbelievable ideas about God as you were raised to understand Him. Please be open-minded. Remind yourself that to succeed in this course, no God concept is necessary. In fact, many of our commonly held God concepts get in the way. Do not allow semantics to become one more block for you. Boy, is that a lesson I keep learning over and over in my own life. When the word God is used in these pages, you may substitute the thought good orderly direction or flow. What we are talking about is a creative energy. God is useful shorthand for many of us, but so is goddess, mind, universe, source, and higher power. The point is not what you name it. The point is that you try using it. For many of us, thinking of it as a form of spiritual electricity has been a very useful jumping off place. By the simple scientific approach of experimentation and observation, a workable connection with the flow of good orderly direction can easily be established. It is not the intent of these pages to engage in explaining, debating, or defining that flow. You do not need to understand electricity to use it. Do not call it God unless that is comfortable for you. There seems to be no need to name it unless that name is a useful shorthand for what you experience. Do not pretend to believe when you do not. If you remain forever an atheist, agnostic, so be it. You will still be able to experience an altered life through working with these principles. I have worked artist to artist with potters, photographers, poets, screenwriters, dancers, novelists, actors, directors, and with those who knew only what they dreamed to be or who only dreamed of being somehow more creative. I have seen blocked painters paint, broken poets speak in tongues, halt and lame and maimed writers racing through final drafts. I have come to not only believe, but know. No matter what your age or your life path, whether making art is your career or your hobby or your dream, it is not too late or too egotistical or too selfish or too silly to work on your creativity. One 50-year-old student who always wanted to write used these tools and emerged as a prize-winning playwright. A judge used these tools to fulfill his lifelong dreams of sculpting. Not all students become full-time artists as a result of the course. In fact, many full-time artists report that they have become more creatively rounded into full-time people. Through my own experience, and that of countless others that I have shared, I have come to believe that creativity is our true nature, that blocks are an unnatural thwarting of a process at once as normal and as miraculous as the blossoming of a flower at the end of a slender green stem. I have found this process of making spiritual contact to be both simple and straightforward. If you are creatively blocked, and I believe all of us are to some extent, it is possible, even probable, that you can learn to create more freely through your willing use of the tools this book provides. Just as doing hatha yoga stretches, alters consciousness when all you are doing is stretching, doing the exercises in this book alters consciousness when all you are doing is writing and playing. Do these things and a breakthrough will follow, whether you believe in it or not. Whether you call it a spiritual awakening or not. In short, the theory doesn't matter as much as the practice itself does. Boy, is that the truth. Oh my goodness. What you are doing is creating pathways in your consciousness through which the creative forces can operate. Once you agree to clearing these pathways, your creativity emerges. In a sense, your creativity is like your blood. Just as blood is a fact of your physical body and nothing you invented, creativity is a fact of your spiritual body and nothing that you must invent. My own journey. I began teaching the creativity workshops in New York. I taught them because I was told to teach them. One minute I was walking in the West Village on a cobblestone street with beautiful afternoon light. The next minute, I suddenly knew that I should begin teaching people, groups of people, how to unblock. Maybe it was a wish exhaled on somebody else's walk. Certainly Greenwich Village must contain a greater density of artists, blocked and otherwise, than nearly any place else in America. I need to unblock, someone may have breathed out. I know how to do it, I may have responded, picking up the cue. My life has always included strong internal directives. Marching orders, I call them. In any case, I suddenly knew that I did know how to unblock people and that I was meant to do so, starting then and there with the lessons I myself had learned. See, I'm a little curious there. Nobody ever really suddenly knows something. I feel like it's more a matter of you've been processing it for a while in the background and then you finally come to a conclusion. But that's neither here nor there. Let's proceed. Where did the lessons come from? In 1978, in January, I stopped drinking. Ha! No wonder this sounds like an AA meeting. Knew it. I had never thought drinking made me a writer, but now I suddenly thought not drinking might make me stop. In my mind, drinking and writing went together like, well, scotch and soda. For me, the trick was always getting past the fear and onto the page. I was playing beat the clock, trying to write before the booze closed in like fog and my window of creativity was blocked again. By the time I was 30 and abruptly sober, I had an office on the Paramount lot and had made a whole career out of that kind of creativity. Creative in spasms. Creative as an act of will and ego. Creative on behalf of others. Creative, yes, but in spurts like blood from a severed carotid artery. A decade of writing and all I knew was how to make these headlong dashes and hurl myself against all odds at the wall of whatever I was writing. If creativity was spiritual in any sense, it was only in its resemblance to a crucifixion. I fell upon the thorns of prose. I bled. If I could have continued writing the old, painful way, I would certainly still be doing it. The week I got sober, I had 2 national magazine pieces out, a newly minted feature script, and an alcohol problem I could not handle any longer. I told myself that if sobriety meant no creativity, I did not want to be sober. Yet I recognized that drinking would kill me and the creativity. I needed to learn to write sober, or else give up writing entirely. Necessity, not virtue, was the beginning of my spirituality. I feel that. I was forced to find a new creative path, and that is where my lessons began. I learned to turn my creativity over to the only God I could believe in, the God of creativity, the life force Dylan Thomas called the force that through the green fuse drives the flower. I learned to get out of the way and let that creative force work through me. I learned to just show up at the page and write down what I heard. Writing became more like eavesdropping and less like inventing a nuclear bomb. It wasn't so tricky and it didn't blow up on me anymore. I didn't have to be in the mood. I didn't have to take my emotional temperature to see if inspiration was pending. I simply wrote. No negotiations. Good? Bad? None of my business. I wasn't doing it. By resigning as the self-conscious author, I wrote freely. In retrospect, I am astounded I could let go of the drama of being a suffering artist. Nothing dies harder than a bad idea. And few ideas are worse than the ones we have about art. We can charge so many things off to our suffering artist identity. Drunkenness, promiscuity, fiscal problems, a certain ruthlessness or self-destructiveness in matters of the heart. We all know how broke, crazy, promiscuous, unreliable artists are. And if they don't have to be, then what's my excuse? The idea that I could be sane, sober, and creative terrified me, implying, as it did, the possibility of personal accountability. You mean if I have these gifts, I'm supposed to use them? Yes. Providentially, I was sent another blocked writer to work with and on at this time. I began to teach him what I was learning. Get out of the way. Let it work through you. Accumulate pages, not judgments. He, too, began to unblock. Now there were 2 of us. Soon I had another victim, this one a painter. The tools worked for visual artists, too. This was very exciting to me. In my grander moments, I imagined I was turning into a creative cartographer, mapping a way out of confusion for myself and for whoever wanted to follow. I never planned to become a teacher. I was only angry I'd never had a teacher myself. Ooh, preach. I was only angry I'd never had a teacher myself. Why did I have to learn what I learned the way I learned it? All by trial and error? All by walking into walls? We artists should be more teachable, I thought. Shortcuts and hazards of the trail could be flagged. These were the thoughts that eddied with me as I took my afternoon walks, enjoying the light off the Hudson, plotting what I would write next. Enter the marching orders. I was to teach. Within a week, I was offered a teaching position and space at the New York Feminist Art Institute, which I had never heard of. My first class, blocked painters, novelists, poets, and filmmakers, assembled itself. I began teaching them the lessons that are now in this book. Since that class, there have been many others and many more lessons as well. The Artist's Way began as informal class notes, mandated by my partner, Mark Bryan. As word of mouth spread, I began mailing out packets of materials. A peripatetic Jungian, John Giannini, spread word of the techniques wherever he lectured, seemingly everywhere. Requests for materials always followed. Next, the Creation Spirituality Network got word of the work, and people wrote in from Dubuque, British Columbia, Indiana. Students materialized all over the globe. I am in Switzerland with the State Department. Please send me. So I did. The packets expanded and the number of students expanded. Finally, as the result of some very pointed urging from Mark, write it all down. You can help a lot of people. It should be a book. I began formally to assemble my thoughts. I wrote, and Mark, who was by this time my co-teacher and taskmaster, told me what I had left out. I wrote more, and Mark told me what I had still left out. He reminded me that I had seen plenty of miracles to support my theories and urged me to include those too. I put on the page what I had been putting into practice for a decade. The resulting pages emerged as a blueprint for do-it-yourself recovery. Like mouth-to-mouth resuscitation or the Heimlich maneuver, the tools in this book are intended as lifesavers. Please use them and pass them on. I think that's especially nice now that I found this in a little free library. Somebody chose to pass it on. Many times I've heard words to this effect. Before I took your class, I was completely separate from my creativity. The years of bitterness and loss had taken their toll. Then, gradually, the miracles started to happen. I have gone back to school to get my degree in theater. I'm auditioning for the first time in years. I'm writing on a steady basis. And most important of all, I finally feel comfortable calling myself an artist. I doubt I can convey to you the feeling of the miraculous that I experience as a teacher, witnessing the before and after in the lives of students. Over the duration of the course, the sheer physical transformation can be startling, making me realize that the term enlightenment is a literal one. Students' faces often take on a glow as they contact their creative energies. The same charged spiritual atmosphere that fills a great work of art can fill a creativity class. In a sense, as we are creative beings, our lives become our work of art. So that's the introduction. Yeah. I think after having read that, I'm very excited to see what the coming materials will be. I have a background in recovery myself. I am over 5 years sober now, and spending time in AA recovery rooms was really helpful for me. So, I'm not someone who uses the word God comfortably, but I do feel very comfortable within a framework like a recovery network. So I'm encouraged to see that showing up in here, especially right at the beginning. So moving on to the second part of the introduction, which is titled Spiritual Electricity, the Basic Principles. For most of us, the idea that the Creator encourages creativity is a radical thought. We tend to think, or at least fear, that creative dreams are egotistical, something that God wouldn't approve of for us. After all, our creative artist is an inner youngster and prone to childish thinking. If our mom or dad expressed doubt or disapproval for our creative dreams, we may project that same attitude onto a parental God. This thinking must be undone. Boy, has that been a journey for me. I feel that. What we are talking about is an induced or invited spiritual experience. I refer to this process as spiritual chiropractic. We undertake certain spiritual exercises to achieve alignment with the creative energy of the universe. If you think of the universe as a vast electrical sea in which you are immersed and from which you are formed, opening to your creativity changes you from something bobbing in that sea to a more fully functioning, more conscious, more cooperative part of that ecosystem. As a teacher, I often sense the presence of something transcendent, a spiritual electricity, if you will, and I have come to rely on it in transcending my own limitations. I take the phrase inspired teacher to be a quite literal compliment. A higher hand than just my own engages us. Christ said, "Wherever two or more are gathered together, there I am in your midst." The God of creativity seems to feel the same way. The heart of creativity is an experience of the mystical union. The heart of the mystical union is an experience of creativity. Those who speak in spiritual terms routinely refer to God as the creator, but seldom see creator as the literal term for artist. I am suggesting you take the term creator quite literally. You are seeking to forge a creative alliance, artist to artist with the great creator. Accepting this concept can greatly expand your creative possibilities. I was kind of wondering where the point was going to land there. That seems fine. As you work with the tools in this book, as you undertake the weekly tasks, many changes will be set in motion. Chief among these changes will be the triggering of synchronicity. We change, and the universe furthers and expands that change. I have an irreverent shorthand for this that I keep taped to my writing desk. Leap, and the net will appear. It is my experience both as an artist and as a teacher that when we move out on faith into the act of creation, the universe is able to advance. It is a little like opening the gate at the top of a field irrigation system. Once we remove the blocks, the flow moves in. Again, I do not ask you to believe this. In order for this creative emergence to happen, you don't have to believe in God. I simply ask you to observe and note this process as it unfolds. In effect, you will be midwifing and witnessing your own creative progression. That sounds kind of nice. Creativity is an experience, to my eye, a spiritual experience. It does not matter which way you think of it, creativity leading to spirituality, or spirituality leading to creativity. In fact, I do not make a distinction between the two. In the face of such experience, the whole question of belief is rendered obsolete. As Carl Jung answered the question of belief late in his life, I don't believe, I know. The following spiritual principles are the bedrock on which creative recovery and discovery can be built. Read them through once a day and keep an inner ear cocked for any shifts in attitudes or beliefs. Here's a list of basic principles that she provides. 1. Creativity is the natural order of life. Life is energy, pure creative energy. There is an underlying, indwelling creative force infusing all of life, including ourselves. When we open ourselves to our creativity, we open ourselves to the Creator's creativity within us and our lives. We are ourselves creations, and we, in turn, are meant to continue creativity by being creative ourselves. Creativity is God's gift to us. Using our creativity is our gift back to God. The refusal to be creative is self-will and is counter to our true nature. When we open ourselves to exploring our creativity, we open ourselves to God, good orderly direction. As we open our creative channel to the Creator, many gentle but powerful changes are to be expected. It is safe to open ourselves up to greater and greater creativity. Our creative dreams and yearnings come from a divine source. As we move toward our dreams, we move toward our divinity. I can see why coming at this from a recovery point of view would be really important, because a lot of this seems based on having a regulated nervous system. So I could see it being really important to reach that place of calm before you can enter a creative state. How to use this book for your creative recovery. There are a number of ways to use this book. Most of all, I invite you to use it creatively. This section offers you a sort of roadmap through the process with some specific ideas about how to proceed. Some students have done the course solo, others have formed circles to work through the book together. In the back of the book, you'll find guidelines about doing the work in groups. No matter which way you choose, the artist's way will work for you. First, you may want to glance through the book to get a sense of the territory covered. Reading the book is not the same as using it. Each chapter includes essays, exercises, tasks, and a weekly check-in. Don't be daunted by the amount of work it seems to entail. Much of the work is really play, and the course takes little more than 1 hour a day. When I am formally teaching, I suggest students set a weekly schedule. For example, if you're going to work a Sunday to Sunday week, begin by reading the chapter of the week on Sunday night. After you've read the chapter, speed write through the exercises. The exercises in each week are critical. So are the morning pages and the artist date. More about these in the next chapter. You probably won't have time to complete all of the other tasks in any given week. Try to do about half. Know that the rest are there for use when you are able to get back to them. In choosing which half of the tasks to do, use two guidelines. Pick those that appeal to you and those you strongly resist. Leave the more neutral ones for later. Just remember, in choosing that we often resist what we most need. In all, make a time commitment of about 7 to 10 hours a week, an hour a day or slightly more if you choose. This modest commitment to using the tools can yield tremendous results within the 12 weeks of the course. The same tools used over a longer period can alter the trajectory of a lifetime. In working with this book, remember that the artist's way is a spiral path. You will circle through some of the issues over and over, each time at a different level. There is no such thing as being done with an artistic life. Frustrations and rewards exist at all levels on the path. Our aim here is to find the trail, establish our footing, and begin the climb. The creative vistas that open will quickly excite you. What to expect? Many of us wish we were more creative. Many of us sense we are more creative, but unable to effectively tap that creativity. Our dreams may elude us. Our lives feel somehow flat. Often we have great ideas, wonderful dreams, but are unable to actualize them for ourselves. Sometimes we have specific creative longings we would love to be able to fulfill. Learning to play the piano, painting, taking an acting class, or writing. Sometimes our goal is more diffuse. We hunger for what might be called creative living, an expanded sense of creativity in our business lives, in sharing with our children, our spouse, our friends. While there is no quick fix for instant, pain-free creativity, creative recovery or discovery is a teachable, trackable spiritual process. Each of us is complex and highly individual, yet there are common recognizable denominators to the creative recovery process. Working with this process, I see a certain amount of defiance and giddiness in the first few weeks. This entry stage is followed closely by explosive anger on the course's midsection. The anger is followed by grief, then alternating waves of resistance and hope. This peaks and valleys phase of growth becomes a series of expansions and contractions, a birthing process in which students experience intense elation and a defensive skepticism. Yeah, sounds like puberty. This choppy growth phase is followed by a strong urge to abandon the process and return to life as we know it. In other words, a bargaining period. People are often tempted to abandon the course at this point. I call this a creative U-turn. A recommitment to the process next triggers the freefall of a major ego surrender. Following this, the final phase of the course is characterized by a new sense of self marked by increased autonomy, resilience, expectancy, and excitement, as well as by the capacity to make and execute concrete creative plans. If this sounds like a lot of emotional tumult, it is. When we engage in a creativity recovery, we enter into a withdrawal process from life as we know it. Withdrawal is another way of saying detachment or non-attachment, which is emblematic of consistent work with any meditation practice. In movie terms, we slowly pull focus, lifting up and away from being embedded in our lives until we attain an overview. This overview empowers us to make valid creative choices. Think of it as a journey with difficult, varied, and fascinating terrain. You are moving to higher ground. The fruit of your withdrawal is what you need to understand as a positive process, both painful and exhilarating. Many of us find that we have squandered our own creative energies by investing disproportionately in the lives, hopes, dreams, and plans of others. Their lives have obscured and detoured our own. As we consolidate a core through our withdrawal process, we become more able to articulate our own boundaries, dreams, and authentic goals. Our personal flexibility increases while our malleability to the whims of others decreases. We experience a heightened sense of autonomy and possibility. Yeah, boundaries are great. I love boundaries. Like that was a real journey I had to go on in my early 30s and really made my life a lot better when I figured out how to set those things. Ordinarily, when we speak of withdrawal, we think of having a substance removed from us. We give up alcohol, drugs, sugar, fats, caffeine, nicotine, and we suffer a withdrawal. It's useful to view creative withdrawal a little differently. We ourselves are the substance we withdraw to, not from, as we pull our overextended and misplaced creative energy back into our own core. We begin to excavate our buried dreams. This is a tricky process. Some of our dreams are very volatile, and the mere act of brushing them off sends an enormous surge of energy bolting through our denial system. Such grief, such loss, such pain. It is at this point in the recovery process that we make what Robert Bly calls a descent into ashes. We mourn the self we abandoned. We greet this self as we might greet a lover at the end of a long and costly war. To effect a creative recovery, we must undergo a time of mourning. In dealing with the suicide of the nice self we have been making do with, we find a certain amount of grief to be essential. Our tears prepare the ground for our future growth. Without this creative moistening, we may remain barren. We must allow the bolt of pain to strike us. Remember, this is useful pain. Lightning illuminates. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of going no contact with my birth family. It was a very necessary pain and one that allowed for a lot of positive things to enter my life. How do you know if you are creatively blocked? Jealousy is an excellent clue. Are there artists whom you resent? Do you tell yourself, I could do that if only? Do you tell yourself that if only you took your creative potential seriously, you might stop telling yourself it's too late? Stop waiting until you make enough money to do something you'd really love? Stop telling yourself, it's just my ego, whenever you yearn for a more creative life? Stop telling yourself that dreams don't matter, that they are only dreams and that you should be more sensible. Stop fearing that your family and friends would think you crazy. Stop telling yourself that creativity is a luxury and that you should be grateful for what you've got. As you learn to recognize, nurture, and protect your inner artist, you will be able to move beyond pain and creative constriction. You will learn ways to recognize and resolve fear, remove emotional scar tissue, and strengthen your confidence. Damaging old ideas about creativity will be explored and discarded. Working with this book, you will experience an intensive, guided encounter with your own creativity, your private villains, champions, wishes, fears, dreams, hopes, and triumphs. The experience will make you excited, depressed, angry, afraid, joyous, hopeful, and ultimately more free. Next section outlines the basic tools. There are two pivotal tools in creative recovery: the morning pages and the artist date. A lasting creative awakening requires the consistent use of both. I like to introduce them both immediately, and at sufficient length to answer most of your questions. This chapter explains these tools carefully and in depth. Please read it with special care and begin the immediate use of both tools. That's where we're going to pick up next time. So my thoughts so far are that it really reminds me a lot of the other recovery experiences I've had that also highlight how multifaceted the human experience is. Because I think that's something that at least drew me into addiction, was trying to make life be just one thing and only being able to tolerate a narrow window of life experiences. And something I think seems like this book is trying to build within people is an ability to notice and tolerate a wider variety of experience and treat that as fodder for creativity. So thank you so much for listening to this first episode of Lizzy Co and the Artist's Way. I'm really excited to jump back in next time and explore what these basic tools are all about.